and welcome to another special edition of the Cornerstone Catch Up. So this is special for a couple of reasons. Main reason is we've got a special guest, Zoe Dronfield, who's one of our landlords, and also this is from our new offices.
Yep.
So this is our very first week in our new office, so it's pretty cool being out and about. So as we normally do when we have a guest on board, we're going to sort of ask a few questions, get into some discussions, probably go well off the topic of what Joe's put us in terms of an agenda, but that's the way we go. And so we'll just start in by, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Zoe, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I'm Zoe Dronfield. I am a property investor. I am also a survivor of domestic violence, and I sit on the board of a national charity, Paladin, the National Stalking Advocacy Service, and I am an IT consultant as well, so I'm a very busy person.
I thought we were busy.
Yeah, I know. I've got lots of hats, but it's about having the right people around you.
We could do some IT help.
Yeah, we're really good, honestly. We'll have a chat afterwards about that. What do you do in your spare time?
Spare time? What's that?
Oh dear.
I tend to film my spare time.
I can imagine with things like this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously,
You're welcome.
you're very busy, got lots going on, but we thought it'd be really good to get a perspective of a landlord that actually works with Cornerstone and somebody that has a different view of the property market. So when we do our catch-ups, we're always talking about property market, we're always talking about our social elements in terms of homelessness and helping more vulnerable clients. So I think it's really good to have another perspective on property. So thank you for that. That's good. So probably a good question to start with is, how did you get into property?
So I became an accidental landlord quite a few years back now. Gosh, how long ago was it? Decades ago. Well, that's horrible to say that. I had a childcare agency and I had contracts with the council, and the business was going great. And I don't know whether you remember the baby P incident. Yes. Everybody sort of knew about that, and we were an outside agency that was supporting the local authority with kind of children on protection measures and stuff like that. And we lost our contract. Well, not lost our contracts. Our contracts were put on hold while they did due diligence, which ultimately meant I had to let a lot of staff go. So the business was no longer viable. So I ended up moving back home with my parents, well, my dad, and became an accidental landlord. And I didn't know anything about, renting properties at all. I hadn't even looked into it. It was just a case of a situation that I was in and I had to deal with it. But had I have known then about guys like you, Cornerstone, and the initiatives that you do, that would have given me some sort of comfort, because actually I went out to the normal market, I suppose, and initially I rented to a friend, and for like half the price of what it was at the market rate, thinking that, oh, thank God you're paying my mortgage, then realised this is a mistake, and then I put it out on the open market, and I had a couple contact me, and they were literally arguing at the property on the day they viewed it, and I was thinking, oh, this doesn't seem good. And she was meant to pay a deposit the following week, then she said, oh, something's happened and the deposit wasn't paid. So I was literally going, is this really what it's like to be a landlord? Like, I can't deal with this.
Yep.
So, that happened, and actually, she didn't take the property forward, thank God, because God knows what kind of tenants they would be. And I ended up renting the property to a lovely family that have actually been there for over 10 years now. The same family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the same family. So then I realised, they're not all like that. That first couple that I met, and then I kind of started talking to my friends, and my friend was like, when she was living at home with the mum, said, I'd really like to move out. And I said, well, I'm thinking about buying another property. Do you want to rent it off me? And then it's kind of grown from there. I've gone and had property education, and I've kind of grown a portfolio, and came across you guys.
What does it look like now in your portfolio now then? Because I know we look after some of your properties, but not all of them. You've got other things that you do as well.
Yeah, so I've got a mix of the social housing, I've got a mix of private ones that I manage myself, I've got HMOs,
Yep.
And some of them I own myself, some of them I own with other partners.
Yep.
So I've got a real mix of stuff going on.
Yep.
But I have to say, the easiest properties are yours.
Yes. You heard that here first. We've not paid her, honestly. Well, obviously we've paid her rent.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because I came into property through, not an accidental route, it was my home, and then we moved home, released some equity, bought another property. And that route of where you have an idea of what it's going to be like to be a landlord, and then you're actually a landlord, and there's quite a lot to it, a lot more than you expect, and it's quite stressful. And I think that's something for, you speak to people who are interested in getting in property, and whilst it's a part-time thing you do alongside other things, it's quite absorbing, isn't it, in terms of your time and energy?
Yeah, and I think it certainly depends on who your tenant is as well. Because my HMOs definitely, turnover, the amount of things, because there's more people complaining. There's more things being touched, more things being broken. It's a lot more. It's more involved when you've got a HMO. But I think my properties that you guys look after, I've never had any issues with them, and actually it's just easy. And for me, I like the fact that I've got a balance, because I do have both, and for me as well, because of my background, because I'm a victim / survivor of domestic abuse, I want to do the social housing type of thing. I understand how people end up in these situations. A victim of domestic violence can end up being in a situation where they're homeless because of their circumstance, but also a perpetrator as well. We've all got to live somewhere, and let's face it, if you're going to just turf a perpetrator out on the street and they've got nowhere to live, they're going to turn to crime again. So realistically, we've got to make sure that everybody's got a roof over their head, because they will need to be rehabilitated, and that is the reality. Because otherwise, if you just, if we live in this kind of world where we come down so hard on everybody, who has the chance? You don't get a chance to rehabilitate them. It just is going to make everything worse. So I'm all for giving people chances, depending on what it is they've done, of course.
Of course.
But I think it's fantastic what you guys do.
It's rare. We sort of thought, which landlords do we want to talk to, and there's not many, but there's a few which are included where there's a kind of connection to what we're doing. So that needs to be a landlord, and to make the return, and obviously it has to kind of cover its costs and make a contribution, and that's a given in terms of running a business. But to then have a different angle to come at it from, in terms of it helping somebody, it's nice when we come across landlords that want to do that. That's really helpful for us. And it's nice that it twins in with people's backgrounds. Are you happy sharing with the guys maybe watching Zoe your story in terms of what happened to you?
Yeah. So I was almost murdered in 2014. So it was a horrific attack. I'd been dating a guy for almost a year, and everything was fine. Sort of 9 months in, things started to unravel. He was drinking in the day, and I just said, I just want to end the relationship. He left. And he wasn't really living with me anyway, but he was there quite a lot of the time. But it was then that he then started to ring me hundreds of times a day, turning up outside the house. I was trying to conduct my normal everyday life. I couldn't do it because it was just impossible. And I was calling the police, and the response from them was, well, he's not really done anything, has he? So you kind of need to wait for him to do something. And I just thought, this is ridiculous, because I can't. They're telling me to turn my phone off as well. I'm a mother, I'm not going to turn my phone off in the day. My children are at school. What if they think the school need to get hold of me? And then after the attack, my story broke in the press. It went in the local press, then it went in the national press. There's been quite a lot of media attention on it, and I think because the photo, the injury photo is quite horrific. It then came out and transpired that there were other victims of this same guy, and actually I think the last count was about 18.
So totally unknown to you? Totally
unknown to me. I mean, when you start a new relationship, they don't turn up with two heads going, "Whoa, I'm an abuser, you know how to watch out." He was charming, he was, You know, he had a good job, he was picking me up in brand new cars. You know, I had no reason to think that he was anything other than the person he was presenting as. So when I found this out, I was really horrified. The fact that actually they'd called the police, they'd been on fast response with the police. And I thought, well, if I've made a call now to the police, you know, even before the attack, I've made these calls, why haven't the police acted on that immediately?
Yeah.
Now, you're only as good as the police officer that's taking that call. And if they don't check, because there's no mandatory statutory obligation on the police to check historic offending, then you're only as good as that police officer that's taking the call. So they took my calls and said, well, he hasn't done anything. However, had I got a good cop and they'd have checked the background, they'd have gone, right, this is a red flag. He's had relationships before, they've ended badly, and he started to stalk them, there's been harassment, and actually 10 years prior to mine, he stalked and was charged with a number of serious offences against a police officer who he was in a relationship with.
Yeah.
So, and that's the same police force, and she's actually still a serving police officer for West Midlands Police. So, I mean, you know, they can't look after their own, then what chance do the rest of us have, you know? So I campaign quite heavily now for a serial perpetrator register. And it's slightly changed. We've got the domestic abuse bill going through Parliament. When we first started kind of talking, I was talking openly around the register, you know, people saying, oh, we don't need another register. And it's not that. It's not. I think I just use that as a hashtag, serial register needed, because you just kind of need a tag and for people to understand, you know, it's like the sex offender register. That's not actually just a register. Yeah. It's actually a framework that exists where they capture information about violent and sexual offenders. However, they don't collect that information for domestic abusers or stalkers. Yep. So I'm saying to the government that they need to open that framework out for those type of offenders. And because the bar's so high, they're not being collected in that framework. And it just, you know, to me, that seems like a simple thing. I work in IT, you know, you can literally just switch a button, you know, so...
And the bill was going through Parliament, wasn't it? And then Theresa May, and then Brexit.
Oh, we've had a new Prime Minister, we've had Brexit, we've had COVID. I mean, we've just literally, it's been delay, and it, you know, it's tiring. I've spent hours, days, weeks, months on the campaigning stuff, but I think you have to be relentless because otherwise change doesn't come. But, you know, and while we are campaigning, we collect more victims that come on the campaign, and it's just horrific because you're like, it hasn't stopped, you know, because it's still going on. You've got to do something about this. I mean, it's proactive policing, and something that I do in my day job is, you know, I digitalise the NHS. So we are now looking at digitalising NHS trusts so they can analyse what kind of patients they've got going through, how long they're how long they're taking to go through the pathway. You know, predicting what their outcomes could be. So you can look into the future. Oh, if we have a surge of COVID, what happens to this service?
Yep.
And it's the same in policing.
Yep.
You know, we could add that same thought processes around policing.
Yep.
But we're just not there at all with proactive work. Oh, I really.
What have you seen in terms of the impacts of COVID? And obviously we've seen demand from charities that we're supporting now who accommodate victims of domestic violence, and they've noticed an upsurge in terms of the cases from COVID. From your perspective, how difficult is that? Do you think that situation has been for people?
Oh, I mean, just absolutely horrific. I can't even comprehend what it would be like to be actually locked down with a perpetrator because there is no respite at all.
Yeah.
I mean, at Paladin we had a 50% surge in reports, and it went. The national statistics are 2 women a week are killed by an ex or intimate partner. In COVID, that went up to 5. So I mean. The effects, and this is, you know, I even shared something the other day and said, if we have another lockdown, think long and hard about it, women will die.
Yeah.
And I say women because it is in the majority women that are violently attacked and killed. So, yeah, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine. And, I've had, because I still get victims that contact me directly on social media, and I'm not trained to give advice. I signpost, you know, and that's what I do is I signpost to the correct places where they need to be. But they still pour their heart out to me and tell me what they're going through. And, you know, just even the fact that the police are turning up, you know, if they finally get there, and they're not wanting to deal with it because of the whole COVID thing, you know. So it's just a huge knock-on effect. And I don't know whether the government are thinking about the bigger picture of it, but actually, like, all of these little things, they're horrific.
I mean, so in your situation, when this happened to you, you had a home. You had somewhere to go. Silly question to ask, what would have happened if you hadn't had somewhere to go?
Well, funnily enough, actually, even though I had my own home, because I'd moved back in with my father when I'd rented my house out, when I'd become the accidental landlord, and I then bought the house off my dad and renovated, so I wasn't going anywhere. My kids were at school locally. However, the police said to me, "You'll have to move," and I said, I'm not moving. And I think that, you know, that's another thing as well, that the focus is very much on the victim to move, go in a refuge. You know, you need to make yourself safe. And it's like, for me, it should be the perpetrator that is removed, and they're rehomed, and they go somewhere else. So I just think it's the wrong way round.
It's interesting you mentioned earlier that and I never thought of that other side you mentioned, which is that victims need accommodation at that point. Perpetrators also need accommodation at that point, and that's not even a side you ever really consider in the scenario. That's what you end up with. You end up with two parties involved, both need accommodation, or there's some element of disruption to their situation in terms of their location or their situation and environment, and both need consideration to make sure that it's a safe outcome.
And I think that's not considered, and obviously if the perpetrator isn't housed anywhere, what happens? Because they're going to turn to crime, they're going to go back to the victim. We need to keep the victim safe.
So with the register, what would that actually require of a perpetrator?
So it would be more than one offence. So two or more offences of domestic abuse, and then they would be on the register. But it just means that it's the statutory obligation part that's the key thing. That it means that the police have to check that information, because if they had have done that in my situation, I truly believe that I wouldn't have gone through that. And actually, the reason I met him the night that the attack happened was because of the response from the police. Because the police weren't doing anything. So I thought, you know, I'm quite a feisty person, and at this point I didn't know it was dangerous. I didn't know I was putting myself in a huge amount of danger, because none of this historic behaviour was, I wasn't aware of it. And, you know, I went and met him and was kind of saying to him, look, this has to stop, I don't want to have you contacting me, and let's just try and end this amicably, and, you know, thinking that I'm talking to a normal person who will take this, you know, and walk away like a normal relationship, and actually no, it nearly ended up with me losing my life. So, you know, it's really important, and I'm not an exception to the rule. You know, this is a blueprint story. It's just that I actually truly believe that because I can talk about it and I go out and talk in the media, that's why my story got attention. I also think the injury pic, it's a sensational picture. So as soon as that goes in the paper or online, people are clicking, and that's what the media want, don't they? So and so, you know, as a campaigner, those are the things that we need. We need things that are going to grab people's attention to make them sit up and listen.
And how do you think how far could you go with combining your passion to make a change there and to use that situation in a positive context with your landlording expertise? Do you know what I mean? Like there's a combination of I don't know, experience or skill set there that could make a real difference. Do you know what I mean? So there's a number of charities in Coventry. It's not just for but there's a number of other charities that provide more of the support side, and something that we're getting back from you heard of Kairos? Kairos, so they I was reading the report this morning that they put together there around a survey essentially they did with a number of victims of domestic violence, and they were looking at what accommodation provision was available within Coventry and the wider West Midlands area, and a lot of them requiring accommodation that was kind of gender specific. So in a lot of cases they were getting mixed into accommodation options through the homelessness service, through the temporary accommodation options with males, other characters, etc., and not knowing or feeling secure in their housing options.
God.
And that shocked me really.
Yeah, it shocked me actually. I can't.
And there's no real
It's just
kind
a whole. Don't go down the gender rabbit hole, because that will just open a whole new can of worms. But you know, how can you have a mixed? You've got a victim of domestic violence, a female. How can you put that victim who has been, you know, a victim of male violence, then in a property where there are males that she does not know as well? You know, it's just
really,
crazy.
really frightening.
Yeah.
Really frightening examples in there of people that have been placed into shared accommodation on a temporary basis because they're homeless, with a known history of being abused, and then have been abused in that accommodation.
No,
and the support framework, there's a support framework there, but it just became really obvious to me that accommodation itself provides an element of a safety or security barrier for someone, and that's not just domestic violence, but that's homelessness in general. But it's so important to have that space where you can feel safe, feel secure, and work through whatever it is you need to work through. And if that only option for you is an option that increases the risk of something happening, it's just phenomenal to me that there seems to be a big under provision of that specialist type of accommodation. And that's just in our market. We're not talking nationally, and we're not talking about cases going from 2 deaths a week to 5 deaths a week. And if that is truly what's happening behind the scenes in terms of the numbers, it's only a matter of time before those people come forward and they need to be dealt with. So it's tough. It's really tough.
It is. And it's, you know, COVID is having such a huge impact on everything, because, you know, the stress. A perpetrator, a victim will be walking on eggshells anyway.
Yeah.
Without COVID.
Yeah. With
the excuse of COVID, you know, I can't even begin to imagine what it would be like having to live in that kind of. And we don't even know who, you know, those properties that are. You know, where someone's not safe, and have they even left their house? You know, has anybody even checked that they're okay? Check your friends, make sure your friends are okay. You know, because just because we're not meant to socialise, just pick up the phone and make sure that your friends are okay. You know, because
I think about simple stuff like so a charity or an organisation provides housing for someone who's a victim, and they are housed in this location, and the police or the services know of people that live in the area. But you're saying there's no obligation, or there's no kind of information source whereby the authorities would go, that location is a risk because these people in that area are a risk to that person. There's nothing.
Yeah, I think from what you're saying, if there were serial perpetrators of domestic abuse, they wouldn't be on a register. There would be no one.
No,
there's no way a charity could find out who lives next door and know if that person was a safe neighbour, basically.
I think this is the problem when you get into like the laws around data and sharing data and all of that. That then becomes hamstrung by all of those laws. You know, we've got so many laws that just they're so in favour of the abuser. You know, and we're trying to keep victims safe. And it's very difficult without the information.
I don't know what landlord rights are, because you can reference your tenants, and you'll reference them largely financially. But I don't know if that's ever something you could imagine a landlord needing or wanting to know.
To do a disclosure.
If you're a single female landlord, you know, and you rent a property to a perpetrator, you could never.
Well,
know.
I would want to know that. Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got to visit them and collect rent and do inspections and put yourself in all those situations.
Yeah.
And you're saying that there's no kind of central database for somebody to do a reference check and find out if someone has a.
You can only do
a conviction, right?
Yeah, you can only do a Clare's law, which you have to be in a relationship with the person to then go to the police and say, oh, I've started a relationship with this person, but you know, I think they're a bit dodgy. Can you just check the background? And lots of those don't even get through. And actually, you're still relying on the victim. This is why the register that I'm campaigning for is different, because Clare's law still relies on the victim going to the police, or the potential victim going to the police and going, oh, I'm not quite sure about this guy, he seems like he might be a bit of an abuser.
Yeah.
You know, who's going to do that? I wouldn't have done that.
No.
He didn't present like that, so.
Yeah, you wouldn't suspect it.
No.
Wow. How did you turn something so awful into such a sort of drive to make a difference? Because I think there's obviously lots of situations where people don't necessarily have the opportunity or have the strength to be able to do that. What was the defining thing for you?
Yeah, I think for me, injustice is like, it just is like one of those things that I cannot stand. And the fact that, you know, when I found out he was a serial perpetrator, he'd done this before, and I worked in IT at the time, and at the time I was working in police systems, so I was like, I can't get my head around how they don't have this information and they're not using it. And, you know, so I just started digging into the detail of like, what on earth is going on? The fact that we don't collect that information, or we collect it, but what for? It's just sitting somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's a waste of time. And, you know, I have this conversation all the time around data, because it kind of is my day job now. You know, like, what are we doing with the data? If we're not doing anything with it, you're just collecting data for the sake of data.
Yeah.
You know, and use it to make something better.
Yeah, it's no good looking at it after and going, oh, we had all this great information on something.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh yeah, we can see our dating of the victims and they're all dead. Oh lovely, thank
Yeah.
you. You know, it's just really, you know. So
how can people support you, Zoe, in terms of your campaigning or any charities you're involved with? But what could we tell people watching they could do?
So we have a
helpful?
petition online on change.org,
Okay.
serial stalkers register.
Yep.
So they can go on change.org and sign that. I think it's got, about 140,000 signatures or something now.
Wow.
I mean, it's got loads. I mean, it seems like common sense. And most people go, isn't that already a thing? Well, no.
Yep.
Most people think it is. And yeah, Paladin, the National Stalking Advocacy Service, you know, please support and donate if you can. You know, obviously they're there if you are going through something yourself.
Sure.
And, you know, they are not a gendered service. You know, it is for men and women. We have victims that are male
Yep.
of stalking. So yeah.
Are you happy for people to talk to you?
Yeah, I mean, people can reach out to me. And given whatever circumstance they're in, I'll signpost to wherever is the most relevant service.
That's good, because you're really good.
We'll make sure we share the details of Paladin anyway, so people can, you know, if people are watching that.
Well, and I think, like in for your service, you know, what I think is as well, if you're somebody that owns a property and you're renting it out and you don't know what to do, or maybe you've had somebody leave and you've got an empty property, is to speak to you guys about how you work in terms of with landlords.
Yep.
Because I mean, I've had lots of conversations, and in Coventry in particular, with landlords that have got properties that they've bought for their child to rent out while they're here at uni.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then rent it out, and then obviously with COVID, you know, what's going on with the uni. So everybody's so nervous at the moment, and there is such a shortage for the stuff that you guys are doing. So
Yeah.
I just, you know, to get in contact with you
Yes.
and talk to you about how you can help them.
Great.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear that we've done a good service for you, because
Yeah.
that's what we think is really important. Your houses are fantastic,
Yeah.
really good quality. A couple of them have become, certainly one of them's become a move-on property now.
Yeah, so a real nice journey actually, and this wasn't by design, but one of your properties the family was in, and then they've actually become, as temporary accommodation, they've actually become a long-term tenant of one of your other properties. So they've transitioned from one to the other, which is just a lovely story.
That's really
Yeah.
nice. Yeah,
And
that's really
just so they've been so complimentary of the standard and the quality. So you know, that's excellent. We aim for a really quality service for the people, because we don't know all the details of the situation that they've come through.
Yeah.
And one thing we can say is each one's been through the mill one way or another, whatever the circumstances are. So it's really nice to be able to turn that. And we recognise, and I suppose it resonates with us, that idea of injustice, because yours is a really traumatic and a real severe case, but we see small elements of injustice on a daily basis, and it's only when people sort of pick up that mantle and actually do something about it that they make a change. So
and your tenacity there is really, really inspiring.
I don't give up. I keep
Good.
saying that to every new Prime Minister. I'm not going away, you know.
which is great.
Yeah.
Oh, so thank you for being so open and sharing that, because
Thank you for having me.
that's really interesting to hear. So we're going to talk about some more
Boring stuff.
general stuff, and we'd love your comment on that.
Okay.
So we'll do the quick fire questions now, because it's just interesting. One of the things we did, we try and do when we have people on, is we hear a lot of deep stuff about that. We hear a lot of stuff about property, but we also like to get to know a little bit more as well. So some quick fire questions. Okay.
For me?
For you.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, okay. And you've got to answer these straight off the top of your head.
No
All
thinking.
right.
Just
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
censor things? You don't know what I might come out with.
I'll just shout a really loud beat.
yeah. Okay. Favourite food?
Oh, Oh God, I can't just answer that off the
Yes,
top of
you
my head.
can. Come on.
Chinese.
Great, okay. Yeah.
Last TV show that you binge watched?
Oh, Queen of the South.
Oh, it's good.
I've not seen that.
It's good.
Yeah.
Is it? I'll have to, that can go on my list then. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Ooh,
That was quick.
Controversial.
I've got cats.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Tea. You made your coffee, didn't you? Tea.
Tea.
Oh, yeah. Favourite band or artist?
Oasis.
Oasis.
Good.
Old school, I like it.
Show my age.
Yeah, we're there together, I'm sure.
Fears or phobias?
I don't like spiders.
No one does.
If there's a spider around. Although my phobia is toenails. I think
Oh.
we spoke about this before.
It depends if they're still on the foot
Not on
or
the
if they've
foot,
clipped.
off the foot.
No.
I can't talk about it. Most embarrassing moment.
Oh God. I have no idea.
You've got one, you just don't want to say it.
Yeah, I could
No,
tell.
I really can't honestly think of anything. I don't get embarrassed very easily.
That's good.
I've got no shame whatsoever.
Skip it. Proudest moment.
Proudest moment, I've probably got a few of those with my campaigning, but I mean, yeah, the campaign and working with other victims. We had there's another campaigner, Rachel Williams, who was also a victim of domestic violence, and she did the first ever victim ran conference last year in Wales. This year couldn't happen because of COVID. And we all got together, and it was literally all survivors in the room, and that was a very proud moment because we all kind of got up and did a talk, and it was a very proud moment that you can come through the other side.
Yep.
You know, it isn't just don't stay there. You know, you can go through something, but always have at the back of your mind, this is just a place where I'm just stopping for now,
Yep.
and I'm going to come out the other side.
Yeah.
You know, it's so.
Good.
That's my bit of wisdom.
Good.
That is
I like
great.
it.
So I'm not going to have to go from that now to talking about The Office. Oh yeah. So some more general stuff for us in terms of our stories. We've got a new office. I suppose you coming from a business background in terms of having the childcare business, you'll understand the dynamic of having a team together in one place. And that's really important.
Yeah.
But obviously these new times, it's a particular challenge in terms of space. I think we mentioned before when we were chatting, we were in quite a small space, which meant that lots of people had to work from home.
Yeah.
And I think we've struggled with that a little bit. Even though we spend a lot of time out and about at places, it's just nice to have a base where we can all be together. So this new office allows us to do that.
Loads of room. This table's about 20 foot long.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room in here now.
Yeah, it's great. So we've got a bit of a room to sort of spread out and make sure we're all safe, which is really good. So next, the big project we've been working on.
Yep, so it's a property in, I don't know if I can give the location away.
Don't give the location.
I won't give the location away. Well, it's in Coventry, I can say that much.
Yeah.
Coventry Project, which is with a new charity that we've just started a relationship with. We've been working with the charity for nearly 18 months now, sort of trying to identify suitable properties for them. A scheme's come up where they're looking to house 16 to 25-year-olds in need of emergency accommodation. So single households, currently they're living in B&Bs.
Mm-hmm.
And we've managed to find a landlord that's done a really nice renovation on the conversion of an old care home into, I think it's 13 flats, 13 self-contained flats, immaculately furnished, really good quality stuff, and then 7 shared rooms on the ground floor. So charity's going to be leasing it from us. I think it's 4 years that they're going to be leasing it from us, and it allows them to provide some housing stability for those clients not in bed and breakfasts. What's nice is there's a shared housing element on the ground floor, and as independence becomes something that they work towards, they can move into their own accommodation within the same building. Great location in Coventry, and really pleased to start that. So it starts on the 5th of October next week.
Yeah.
And then we'll be supporting them with that, which is great. So that's a real win. Sort of a new market for us, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's a few things that are sort of particular sort of positive parts out of this for me. One has been Maria, our new team member, coming on board, getting involved in that. She's done a fantastic job of engaging with the charity and doing a great job there. And I think the biggest thing though is the quality.
Yeah.
Like what we said to you earlier about the quality of your properties, these are really high standards. So I get frustrated when there's an expectation that, you know, the sort of social housing should be of a poorer standard. And it doesn't, particularly when you're working with people that have been through some difficult times, there's almost more of a reason to invest in high quality property, because it's actually about saying, no, you're as worthwhile as the next person. It gives a real foundation for people to be able to rebuild their situation from. So these are immaculate. Like, I was walking around going, wow. So it's fantastic.
The owners come in at it a lot like you are, Zoe, in that really nice guy, spent a lot of money on the building, was looking ideally for the student market to support him. That market's not really materialised this year, and he's got other properties within the city and within the region that he gives to social housing providers. So yeah, actually, I was trying to work out the other day how we got in contact with him, and he was referred to Valley House.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Valley House passed him to us, and then we've managed to sort it out for another charity. So that's really nice. Yeah. So there are landlords out there that want that balance of investment, but equally giving back, and we're finding more of them, which is the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really nice. I think in terms of our contracting Coventry, so as part of, obviously we've got the temporary accommodation side where we help homeless families, and then the big piece is that transition to move on, so moving people from that journey of homelessness through to a permanent accommodation. And as part of our contract with the council, we have to deliver 8 properties per quarter, and we've got our 8 in line for October, which is really good news.
They should all be handed over before the end of October, and we're already starting on January's intake, which will be getting bought through the charity that we run. So Keystone Foundation is a charity that we've set up, and we'll be buying properties in January in the charity's name. So that's using a new social impact fund that we built a relationship with, which will enable us to be quite a quick purchaser in the market, so it puts us in a cash buyer position. The challenge now is trying to find properties at the price that we need them at to make them kind of viable on that lower income model. Yeah. Which sort of talks about this auction. Have you ever bought anything at auction?
I was going to say, I'll see you at the auctions.
we register online every couple of weeks for either Bond Wolf or Lovitz or any of the others, and the prices are unbelievable.
Yes.
Like, as
they end up going for more than actually they should.
I don't know why.
I just think it's the psychology of an auction, and people go thinking they're going to get a bargain, and once they bid, they're locked in.
Yeah.
You know, it's the psychology of it. That's why auctionists win. Yeah. You know, because they're locked in psychologically. They're locked in, and but I was going to get it. Oh, yeah, but what about you, sir? Another 500. Oh, yeah.
It seems to be easier on the computer. It seems to be higher on the computer, because at least if you're in a room, there's an element of you've got to be confident enough to bid, and there's that physical accountability that you're going to be the buyer. But when you're behind a computer screen, it's easy. It's like eBay.
It's like eBay, isn't it?
You just click and bid. And we saw a couple of properties that we were going to go to around the 65,000-70,000 mark. They went for 130, 135. They're not even worth that before you've had any money.
No, it's crazy.
So if you bought that house, we'll help you. So it's a bit strange that. We've been lucky at auctions in the last quarter of the year, in the last 2 years. So we picked up a couple at kind of November, December auctions, and that's tended to be, I think, because at Christmas time, people are less worried about kind of doing a deal over Christmas or winter or whatever. Focuses on Christmas will start again in January, so they tend to be quiet ones. So we're hoping that the timing for January's intake, we might get something at auction this year. 1 or 2 would be nice.
Yeah, but you do end up going down that route of the really ones that need either a lot of work or they're a bit. I mean, we had one that we bought last December, and it was a 2-week completion. So you really got to be ready, you know, to be able to do that.
It was also the cheapest house sold in Coventry.
Yes, it was. It was. I don't think Anthony Collins would thank us for that. When I remember when we rang and said we've just bought this one, and we didn't spot it's a 2-week completion. They were like, "What? We're going off." So yeah, I think I've ruined somebody's Christmas with that. So it's tough, really tough times. There's so much going on in the economy, and I think everybody who speaks has got an opinion on it. Furloughs coming to an end, transitioning into a different scheme. What's your thoughts on what's going to happen in terms of employment and things?
Well, it's worrying times, isn't it? But I think that people. Forever the optimist I am, so I probably will wind people up, because it's like I would change skills, you know, like if you do lose your job, for me, I always think that something good comes out of something bad. So if, whenever I've been made redundant in my life, I've always gone on and got something better.
Yep.
So you probably needed to leave anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
You were just sitting there getting dusty, move on.
So,
I just think, obviously it's going to be a challenge, but just fight through it. That's, I just don't let things beat me, and I think, and I get it, if you've got other things going on, but there's help out there as well, so I think people often feel like they're on their own with stuff, but there are charities for all sorts of things, like the Samaritans. If you just need to speak to somebody, you guys, in terms of housing, there's domestic abuse charities. That's what they're there for. The sector is still there, the sector will be there, and I just think lean on it.
Yeah.
You've got to do the work though, haven't you? This is the thing. You've got to be prepared to do that.
Yes.
There's a story that pilots are the ones I think about at the moment.
Yeah.
And they are exceptionally skilled and qualified in very much one particular discipline.
Yeah.
And when furlough ends, there may be thousands and thousands of pilots. There's no cross-training skill set for a pilot.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And the skill, and so it's that element of the economy that I think is going to be hit. That's going to be strange. I don't know what.
It's going to be, there's got to be quite a few specialisms that have been really, they're going to be really.
But there's got to be some transferable skills there. I mean, you
have to press that big autopilot button, don't you?
If only it was that easy.
I'm only saying that I've got a friend that's a pilot. Yeah, I'm only saying it because I've got a friend that's a pilot.
My son's actually wants to be a pilot. I'm going to show him this. You're in big trouble.
Well, that money on flight school.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is like that when you fly jumbo jets. Yeah, that's what it tells me.
But you know what? We're all saving now to go. So as soon as it opens back up again, we'll be gone.
I know. Tell me about it. Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions, Joe?
We had one about auctions.
Oh, we did.
So as a strategy, is it useful? But then, what kind of alternate ones are there to hopefully get good price properties?
Alternate strategies.
Yeah.
So auctions are good. They're difficult now, particularly now just because of, I think, the way the markets are, supply and demand. There's not a lot of stuff. There's a lot of buyers, and so that frenzy is going to auction. TV shows and stuff that we've seen make it look easy. It's not that easy. So auctions are a way. They're not the preferred way by any means for us at the moment, are they?
No.
A bit of direct stuff. So a lot of the landlords like Zoe that we work with, we've built good relationships with them. There's opportunities where some of them are considering actually selling some of their stock to us now. It's a good time to sell. It's definitely a seller's market at the minute. It's not really a buyer's market. So we are being quite choosy, aren't we? Foot's on the ball at the minute. We're buying stuff that we think works at the numbers that we're working on, but we're not getting carried away because that's risky. To kind of see the market going up and think I've got to get in quick before it goes. There's a risk there because if you get in at the wrong price, if you don't do your numbers correctly, it might work today, but what happens in 6 to 12 months' time? So knowing those numbers and being a little bit cautious with stress testing everything is important. Agents, we've got good relationships with agents. That's the kind of typical way to go. Bit of direct marketing, which we're going to start working on. So we're going to try and establish more of a direct presence in Coventry. We've never put a for sale board up. We've never put a management board up. We've never really put any leaflets out. Everything we've done has been through social media or word of mouth. So we will start to probably make our presence a bit more known in terms of some direct marketing, which will inevitably make some sort of difference.
Yeah.
Because I think the amateur landlord probably, if you imagine how did you work out who to use as a letting agent? You probably walk out the front door, you see a board on someone, you ring them and just go, could you rent my house out? So there'll be a big portion of that market that will respond to that type of marketing. Those are probably the ways.
I think if you are considering making an investment in property, think of it as a long-term investment. Though it's like I don't know, if anybody's traded in stocks and shares. You can try and play the market and you can try and get in when it's dropped and buy, but that's not the way that people make money in stocks and shares. It's a long-term game. So you have to think, can this property make money now? Can it make money in 10 years' time?
And totally focus on your net return. And your net return over time is a big one. So your cash flow based on time contributed to the projects that we run should be really strong because you don't need to do anything. We do all the work.
Not like my HMOs.
Exactly. So don't chase the sales or the revenue, but it's your profitability as an investment and it's how much time you have to put in to get that back that you should be working on. Any other questions?
No.
All right.
Any waves from any
Any
family
waves?
members?
No family members.
No
No,
waves.
Joe Malali's slack.
What day is it? Is it Thursday?
Afternoon.
She should be watching this. This is
Should be.
disgraceful. Yeah.
We'll see her afterwards with the traffic.
Well, so I suppose to close up then, just to say thank you so much to Zoe
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
It's alright.
Thank you for sharing your story.
No, thank you for having me.
And it's been really, really interesting, really insightful as well. So thank you.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff.
See you later.